Hey, thank you everybody for joining us. We've got a great webcast today. Lots of information content that we're going to cover. Really have Jamie Wimberly with us as well. I'll introduce Jamie in just a few minutes. Many of you I know, some of you I don't. So again, welcome. We know that your time is spread thin, and we're so glad to have you with us. I was just kind of going over the attendee list right before we got started. We've got Georgia Power, Southern Company, NV Energy, Northwest Natural, Salt River Project, One Gas, Pico, Excel Energy, LADWP, Tucson Electric, Nat Grid, Snohomish Pud, AEP, CPS Energy, Evergy, SoCal Edison, TECO, a couple of folks on the Canadian side, Fortis Alberta and Sask Power. Liberty Utilities joins us as well, and even Hawaii Electric, HECO, which gets the award for the greatest distance not having to travel thanks to virtual communication. So we really feel like we've nailed a great topic, a great keynote presenter from Jamie Wimberly, and a lot of good information that we're going to be sharing with you. I'm going to cover a couple of quick slides in just a second, and then I'll turn things over to Jamie. To kind of resonate what Lauren was saying, we really want this to be interactive. So please incorporate that chat feature. Send in your questions as they come to mind, and then we will have plenty of time at the end of the presentation to get to those. Really want this webcast to be fun. We want it to be informative, and we want it to be very interactive. You know, as I was preparing for my part of this presentation, I guess the term paradigm shift comes to mind. We don't use that word as much as we used to anymore, but it basically means a new set of rules. And when we talk about beyond the meter, it's kind of interesting because first and foremost, beyond the meter is not new at all. You may not have really heard this term a lot in the past. And beyond the meter just simply means value-added services, just the ability to provide as a utility a variety of non-utility specific services to your either residential or commercial customers. We're going to focus solely on residential customers today, but I think one of the kind of the key sort of takeaways today is, and Jamie will really talk about this in great detail, is this paradigm shift to become more product focused versus process focused. It's interesting that there are many utilities that are joining us today that have been offering beyond the meter solutions for 20, 30 years. As you learn a little bit more about Oncourse Solutions and our history, we go back 30 years as a utility-owned beyond the meter organization. Some of you have already started that journey. Others of you are just beginning that journey. But regardless, I think you'll find that beyond the meter services are not new. In fact, and I really like this slide a lot, we're almost at the 101st anniversary, and in 30 days from today, in fact. This was a great article going back 101 years from Pacific Power in Portland, Oregon, that talks about incorporating meter readers, truckmen, and linemen to essentially go door-to-door selling appliances. And if my math serves me correctly, they actually got a 350% increase in sales for doing such. And even just in looking at this black and white photograph, you see different appliances in the windows that they're selling. So I think really this is, as far as I'm concerned, kind of the first physical evidence that we have of beyond the meter solutions. I think another key takeaway is that utilities are in a better position than any other organization, and especially if we compare this to like alarm companies or cable companies, you're already in the homes of hundreds of thousands of residential customers. As you start to see Jamie's analytics that he'll be sharing, you've already gained their trust. You're not only in their homes, but you're in their hearts. They trust you, they like you. You're in their wallet. You provide them with a monthly bill that Jamie will also show, and our data complements that you know, providing these type of value-added services on bill is a great benefit to you and to your customer. You're also in their ear. They listen to you, and you have the ability of connecting with them via voice from your call centers. It was interesting that the smart thermostat was actually invented in 2007 and not by the utility industry as a whole. It came from a third-party organization. So you have a unique opportunity within this industry and within the beyond the meter movement to really lead the charge. Let me just tell you a little bit about who we are and the services that we provide, and then I'm going to introduce Jamie to you. We've been providing value-added services to utilities for 30 years now. We primarily focus on home service solutions. We operate as three different organizations: American Water Resources. We were a part of American Water for many years. Pivotal Home Solutions, which was really the birth child of Nicor Gas 30 years ago, and another brand called American Home Solutions. If you look at kind of who we are by the numbers, 30 plus years within the utility industry, over 3 million contracts with residential customers coast to coast, 35 plus utility partnerships. We have relationships with 2,400 contract organizations. These would be plumbing companies, electrical companies, HVAC companies, coast to coast. And we average about 550 repairs on a daily basis. We are, of course, A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. Our kind of customer base is divided into three different categories: municipalities, water specific, and energy, which would be gas and electric. Our product selections cover a full sort of suite of solutions, anything found with inside and outside of the home. This would include service line, gas, water, electric, appliance repair, replacement, HVAC plans, including maintenance programs, and even home electronics type programs that would cover things like laptops, desktop computers, tablets, smartphones, even smart technologies like wearables, Fitbits, smartwatches, etc. And some of our newest technologies include on demand. You don't want to have perhaps a monthly contract, but you just need a plumber or an electrician, and we provide those services as well. So let's look at kind of the industry, the home services industry, from three different perspectives. Just in general terms, why would a utility want to be in the home services industry as a whole? And this just doesn't apply to home services. This would apply to, other vendors or programs that might include solar or battery storage or EV chargers or a variety of other different smart home technologies, et cetera. First of all, the home service market is huge. It's $657 billion at current value. It's growing by 10% year over year. Last year alone was a $62 billion year. So it's a huge industry. Whether you want to be a part of it or not is entirely up to you. But as I mentioned earlier, you're already in their homes. You have a very unique opportunity to take advantage of that. Obviously, there are a lot of single-family homes out there across America, 93 plus million homes. And to know, with rising interest rates and rising real estate prices, people are staying in their homes longer now than they ever have before. From a homeowner's perspective, homes, and I think most of us on this call today are, in fact, homeowners. Homeowners, obviously understand that their homes are getting older. The average, in fact, age is 30 years. Home repairs are expensive, and clearly we all know that they're a hassle. Appliances are getting far more intelligent than ever before. The age of sort of a simple, just turn it on, turn it off appliance is long gone. Not only are they more expensive, but because there's so much more technology embedded into the appliance, much more likely to break. And then I think finally, and it's really important to understand that 67% of your residential population, if you will, can't afford a $400 or $500 emergency repair. They would be forced to either borrow that money or they would have to put it on a credit card. And that's why we feel that, having service plans, for example, can provide a needed service. From a utility perspective, and Jamie will talk about this in great detail, you've gone to a lot of trouble over many years to build their trust, and you have their trust. Secondly, utilities are looking for now more than ever for kind of new and different ways of providing services, again, becoming more product focused versus program focused. What will the utility industry look like as a whole 10 and 20 years from now? Each of us have the ability of sort of shaping what that future is and looks like. The vendor universe, even present on today's call, and very much a part of Jamie's organization, now part of eSource, the Beyond the Meter Working Group. There are a lot of great vendors out there, including Oncourse, that are highly honest, highly ethical, that are very able to help you throughout your Beyond the Meter journey. Revenue. These type of programs can pay significant dividends to the utility itself. We have many of our utility customers over the last 30 years that are earning millions of dollars in newfound revenue, non-usage revenue, if you will, and that money can be applied to a variety of different ways above or below the line, but especially to programs such as low income, for example, or payment assistant programs. Let's take a look at J.D. Power and what they have to say about these value-added solutions. I think most of you are probably familiar with J.D. Power's Power Quality and Reliability Index. It's a CSAT scoring system of J.D. Power's on a scale of 0 to 1,000. The first thing that J.D. Power points out is that if you look at the average sort of utility operating at about the 677 points, again, 0 to 1,000, just by making your customers aware of the fact that you provide value-added programs, can increase your Power Quality and Reliability Index score by 58 points. If they actually participate, you can pick up another 12 points. So easily you can pick up, according to J.D. Power, 70 points above and beyond where you currently are by providing these value-added programs. That can move you from below the average segment line in your particular regions and markets to above that line, which obviously would make your CEO and all of your stakeholders very, very happy. Another thing that I wanted to point out, and I think we've seen this in the sort of with the birthplace of marketplace sites, a lot of utilities very quickly jumped on the bandwagon of marketplaces, but very quickly realized they're not performing the way you intended them to be. And just because you build something doesn't necessarily mean your customers will come. And so a lot of the success that we've had, and if you look at our programs across 35 plus utilities, the average penetration rate for us runs about 32%, meaning that 32% of your residential customers have bought into our programs and services, and we use that as a benchmark. But that doesn't happen just by accident. We bring a lot of money to the table, the ability to promote, to advertise, to market these type of programs, and obviously, most importantly, take really good care of your residential customers, your stakeholders. But there are three things in particular that we found over the last 30 years that are really the key drivers in making any Beyond the Meter program a success. And the first being on bill. And Jamie's going to share with you some data from Russell Research that their organization has done that really kind of backs this up. But the ability to provide these programs on bill is huge. And I think it's about 70% of your customers would prefer to pay for them on bill. The next one is utility branding. And obviously, customers are much more apt to open correspondence coming from you than from us or any other vendor, third party. So, when you lend your brand, whether it's a co-branding or a full branding, is really going to be a key driver. And then finally, we won't spend much time on this, but this is really critical, is the ability to leverage move calls to promote these types of programs and services. So that's a lot of information in a little amount of time, but I really wanted to let Jamie do the talking today. Jamie's been around for 25 plus years within the utility industry. I've known Jamie personally for, 20 plus years. Jamie has done an amazing job within the utility space, starting with his own organizations, the Distributed Energy Financial Group, and then the Utility Customer Research Consortium. He's been a leader in both of those industry areas. From a prepay perspective, he's been the voice of prepay. In fact, such a success that eSource has now purchased Jamie and his organizations. So all of these organizations are now backed up by eSource. And then most recently, Jamie has founded the Beyond the Meter Working Group, which he'll tell you a little bit about as well. So please help me to welcome Jamie Wimberly. We're so glad to have you, Jamie, and we'll turn things over to you.
Thanks, Rob. I really appreciate that gracious introduction. And again, so I'm the senior VP for customer strategy at eSource. And let me make sure that, okay.
Okay, you should have control now.
Okay, great. So, as Rob said, I've been in the utility sector for a long time, going on 30 years now. So I've seen a lot, done a lot. I'm really excited about this beyond the meter. I agree with Rob in the sense that um, we are entering into a new era. And that era is being driven by a number of different things that we'll go over. But again, let's just kind of echo what Rob said. Beyond the meter, what we're referring to is those products and services that are value add, non-core to the traditional commodity portion of your business. They're really geared towards supporting those customers who are spending their own money on their side of the meter in terms of home repair and maintenance, smart homes, renewable EVs, and so on. So it's a huge market, growing market. And so the question becomes, what is the role of the utility going forward? What does that business model look like, and what does the customer support entail? Just a brief overview of the Beyond the Meter work group. Rob actually helped start that. So again, he came to me and said, "Hey, you know what? There's all this focus and opportunities around what customers are doing around Beyond the Meter. So let's bring together a number of utilities and vendors and kind of work out some big picture kind of questions." And you can see here, we're doing a lot of different types of work. I'm not going to get into that. There's a few members, in fact, on today's webinar. But a lot of work is being done through this working group. And if you're interested, I can always provide you more information. And this just gives you a snapshot, as Rob said. I mean, it's a very interesting and diverse group of not only utilities but also vendors. As you can see here, there are a mix of IOUs. There's some public. There are different types of vendors. Some are focused on, like Oncourse, around some value products and services, around warranties and so on. There's some transactional and so on. Just I like Rob. I'm interested in history, and so when I look at Beyond the Meter, it's interesting to me as Rob did, to go all the way back. Oftentimes we think about Thomas Edison as the godfather of our sector, and certainly he was a wonderful innovator, inventor, did so many great things. But I think most people forget that his real superpower was around marketing. And so really what he set out to do is essentially anything that essentially was going to use more of as a product, electricity, he was all about. So again, he was very much involved in creating inventions that essentially were the end use for his product, electricity. And so you can see here, I mean, it's BTM really is a history of the whole utility sector. And again, as we said, we're entering into what we're calling the new BTM boom here. And so the question becomes, why now? There's a mix even within our working group. There are a number of utilities that have had Beyond the Meter groups for years, and some others are fairly new to it. An entry point, as Rob said, was around marketplaces. But again, when you look at the utility in terms of their business model, realizing that there's a lot of risk and opportunity around electrification, it does become an interesting question. What is the business case or revenue model for electrification going forward? And that's a major thrust of what we're trying to do through the work group, and we'll talk about that today. So today's agenda is pretty straightforward. I'm going to first of all focus on customer, then talk about the utility, and then some takeaways, and then as we'll have some time for questions. Feel free to, again, to use your chat function in order to make observations or ask questions. So the BTM customer, as I said, are those customers who essentially are spending their own money and or engaging with the utility around different things focused on Beyond the Meter. I think this is an extremely important slide because, one of the things that kind of an aha is when you look at beyond the meter, oftentimes, as Rob said, we're looking at from a utility perspective programs, and from kind of a market perspective, we're looking at folks that are out there trying to sell service contracts or widgets, if you will. But if you look at the ecosystem and this framework, really what you're trying to understand from a customer perspective is how all these things fit. So there's a high propensity for a customer that gets into residential solar that they are going to quickly move to have an electric vehicle charging. Probably they'll probably have a smart home. And so again, one of the things that we need to kind of look at is the totality of this framework, and both in terms of customer expectations and requirements, but also in terms of what that total ROI is. And so you have these verticals of renewables, electric vehicles, smart home, and then cutting across that, you have different categories of storage and generation. And so that touches each one of these vertical services, energy efficiency, demand response, pricing, and load management. So again, from a customer's perspective, let's say they get renewables and electric vehicles, and they start to combine that. They're looking at, what do I need to support that in terms of warranties or even an end of life removal? How am I going to get billed for this? And so on. And then, again, from a utility perspective, they're entering into this conversation with a lot of the traditional DSM programs, or that might be around residential demand response. It could be around, again, providing, generation or something, or charging. So there already is a role for the utilities. It's usually, though, again, on those regulated programs. And so, again, what's interesting about this is thinking about it as a complete package of beyond the meter rather than a particular widget or service. Some things I would say about the customer. Again, as I just said, beyond the meter really is taking into account that a customer is going to be a customer for a variety of things that we consider beyond the meter. So we need to kind of think about that. We need to think about the horizontals, so those things that are touching those verticals. We need to expect that the customer is going to think about it as a portfolio. So everything needs to be integrated and it needs to work at all times. That means that, both from a technical or engineering perspective, you have a system that has various pieces to it, the Internet of Things, that needs to be working and it needs to be supported as a portfolio. So there's a funny commercial, I think it was Progressive, that something was going on with the garage door opener, and it was like causing all these different things going on in the house just for that one little glitch. I think from a financial perspective, again, we need to look at from a customer's expectation that there's a total ROI. Usually, what is that return on investment coming off their bill? It's not just a single investment or purchase. Moreover, especially those early adopters, the BTM value proposition is not just dollars and cents. A lot of these customers, again, are fairly well heeled. They're also looking at convenience, control. What I thought was always smart, that the EV companies started to look at their vehicles around performance, and how fast they are and how efficient they are. And again, the utility, its primary role will be to support that beyond the meter customer. One of the things that is under leveraged is, as Rob said, there is a strong level of trust. So, as you can see here, 53% of our recent survey respondents, and which was a national survey conducted by Russell Research, over 1,000 Americans across the country, were asked, how would you rate your electric utility as a trusted energy advisor? And 53%, so a majority, said the top three. So that's a very great score. And so, almost over 90% actually looked at, some level of trust. for the utility. And again, that is like essentially gold from a marketing standpoint to have that level of trust. Um, and then you look at specifically when information is received that's connected to beyond the meter, it starts creeping up. So again, customers are very much open to and actually expect their utility to increasingly providing them good information, recommendations about what they should be looking at as far as beyond the meter and so on. And what I don't have here, but we have a whole body of research. A lot of this is grounded in the fact that there are certain parts of beyond the meter, residential solar comes into mind, that there's a lot of I don't know, I hate to use the word, but it's true. There's a lot of fraud in that space. Or there is a lot of deception. And so these customers are essentially looking at spending maybe $25,000, $30,000 on a solar array, putting it on their house. They're being told a lot of different things. They're trying to figure things out. They are looking to their utility to help them figure those things out and give them good information. Um, again, to Rob's point, I mean, when you ask if you needed home services or repair, would you be more likely to use a service that was recommended by your electric utility? Again, almost 50% said it would be more likely to use that service if recommended by their local utility. Again, it gets back to that trust issue. This is a really important slide, and again, it's important not only in terms of pretty clearly showing that people want to have, it's part of their convenience and that part of just doing business in a way that's easy. But again, for BTM products and services, oftentimes they would prefer, so almost 70% said they would prefer to be billed on their utility bill. And now again, most utilities do not offer this, and there's a variety of reasons for this. But again, we're looking at from the customer needs and requirements, and we're asking them these questions. One of the things I will challenge us today to kind of think through is that the utility bill has always been seen as, fairly straightforward. It's essentially a statement of, what you owe over what you consumed over the past month or so. But I would argue that we need to kind of think bigger in terms of the utility bill and bill pay. For one, it is customer experience for most customers that after they sign up for their service, that's what they get. They get a bill every month. That is their experience. Secondly, it is increasingly going to be a statement of record or ROI for those customers that are getting into beyond the meter. So again, for example, residential solar again. Clearly, they're looking for their ROI to be savings coming off of what they would have spent on that utility bill, and now they're self-generating using their solar array. Third, that I think, again, the bill also is increasingly going to be looked at as a financing mechanism. So again, as a lot of folks don't have the credit or prefer to pay as you go, and so they're entering into some kind of financial arrangement. So I can definitely see the bill becoming that financial kind of component to it too. So again, part of our exploration around beyond the meter is, when you look at something as simple and traditional as a bill, I mean, what does that mean going forward? And I would argue, again, it means much more than just how we've traditionally felt that utility bill should serve. This is a busy slide. It's a little hard to see, but we did some work a couple years back, and we spent a lot of time and money to essentially do a full-blown customer journey mapping of a residential solar. And what you can see here, well, hopefully you can see it. There's very distinct phases in that journey, and what I mean by distinct, that they're different from your traditional utility customer. So essentially, you have a discovery phase. That's people asking questions, getting information, leads into contracting, which then leads into installation and interconnection, leads into usage. It even encompasses end of life. So 25 years or even sooner, Somebody needs to get that solar array off their roof. What does that look like from a customer service or a contracting perspective? So there's a lot of peaks and valleys here. I mean, the peaks are opportunities for CSAT. The valleys are things that from either a utility or market perspective, but certainly from a customer's perspective, that things need to be worked on. And so, especially when you look at post installation, so the solar array is already on the house, there needs to be some kind of interconnection take place, and that could take weeks, maybe even months at some point, and nobody's talking to the customer, and we call that the mystery phase. And again, I can guarantee that not only is your CSAT potential going to dip dramatically the longer that goes, but you're going to have some very angry customers calling up the contact center and anybody else that can get on the phone wondering when the heck that solar array is going to start working, and they're going to start seeing that return on their bill. So again, part of what when we look at beyond the meter and the customer, we have to understand that they have their own journeys that are distinct from those traditional utility journeys, and somebody needs to serve those customers in every stage of their journey. And a little bit more about that. So when you even look at the solar marketing communication needs, as I said before, the discovery, again, a utility could be providing some education on the basics, the solar calculator. There's going to be information on rebates and other incentives, especially connected to the IRA funding that's coming out of the federal government. A checklist would be useful, and even a list of local installers. Even some utilities have even gone further, and they've essentially, put them through some kind of accreditation kind of process to provide, again, that trust that customer is spending that $25,000 to $30,000 with the right contractor. Contracting is like very complex. Unfortunately, what we've seen with the solar contracts is that oftentimes they're incomplete or they have holes in them. When we did our customer journey mapping, unfortunately, there was even like 12% of the customers we interviewed, they didn't even have a contract. So that's a problem or a challenge. Installation, we already talked about. Billing is really the moment of truth. Is this a good, am I getting the savings and the return that I expected, I was told I was going to get? And also it's an opportunity, again, to interweave the utility DSM programs around energy efficiency audits and so on. And there's a lot of ongoing kind of opportunities to engage with that customer. Again, a customer on the residential solar side with their beyond the meter journey is easily around 25 years. So it's a long, long journey. So let's talk about the utility. So we interviewed all the 15 plus 20 utilities or so. And basically, we asked them, why are you looking at beyond the meter now? And so one answer is, as we've talked about, I mean, the energy landscape is rapidly evolving. A lot of utilities are really, betting their future on electrification. There's the mandates around climate change, clean energy. Affordability is a huge challenge going forward. So you have an increasing focus on sustainability, decarbonation, and energy efficiency, and all that balanced against, what's going on with the bill and the cost of that core service. So this, opportunities arise from this environment, and that really leads to, what are some of the goals? One is around just enhancing customer engagement, an opportunity to improve customer satisfaction. I will say that, there's been plenty of modeling done, and we've even done some modeling that CSAT not only results in making you look good on your scorecard, but it actually results in revenue. And so I'd be glad to have a conversation sidebar about that. But encourages electrification so that, many utilities that are entering BTM, they don't have specific revenue targets necessarily or goals, but they're looking at this as a source of innovation and actually around new product development, and oftentimes tied to their broader goals around electrification. There certainly is many utilities are enjoying the increased revenue. I think it's interesting when you look at the financial model for any given utility. As I mentioned, there's a lot more risk there, especially on the regulatory side, but also everything from fires to, aging infrastructure, heat islands and climate change and everything else. So again, how do you manage that risk? Well, one way to do it from a revenue perspective is you have different types of revenue that could essentially serve to, increasingly over time and scaled, could essentially feather out some of those risks in terms of cash flow perspective. And then there's regulatory mandates. Some states like Washington, state of Illinois, I mean, very, very aggressive in terms of their clean energy goals. California, certainly. I expect that even in red states, I'm in the state of Georgia, and again, huge investments, not only into clean energy, but also into EV infrastructure, and we even have a couple of new plants coming online here to produce EVs. So, again, this is not only connected to our part of the electrification part, but also the new economy. This is just one example. Dominion's interesting because, first of all, they've been in this space for a long time. Secondly, they definitely see it for all those reasons that I just stated. They're a part of everything, including the revenue side. It's interesting also, they have done this in terms of what they've paired up the regulated and the unregulated. So they're doing a lot of the program and product development on the unregulated side, but they're tying it right back into what they're trying to do with their DSM portfolio and other regulated programs. You can see here their business model requirements. I gotta say, and Oncourse is a good example, but there's a lot of BTM vendors that would check each one of these easily. And you can see all these like buckets of things that they're looking at in terms of, what should be in our beyond the meter portfolio. And so right now they're really focused on solar and smart home, but they're looking at a whole bunch of things. And I gotta say, most utilities I talk to realize, even on the regulated side, said, hey, on the residential, I mean, what does beyond lighting look like? Because we've burned through all our low-hanging fruit around programs that would hit our targets on the DSM side. So what else are we going to do? And how is that connected to what the customer is doing around beyond the meter? So again, there's a lot of opportunity there. Oops. Again, the Dominion also has, I think, the right view in terms of smart home. Right now, I mean, the customer's getting hit by any number of vendors from all those verticals I said in terms of the framework. So they're getting, offers for everything from security, home security, to renewable energy, to, chargers, and you name it. And so Dominion's really kind of looking at, how do we make this more holistic and easy for our customers, and basically there's leveraging their brand, Dominion Energy, to essentially bring these various services together, either that they're supporting through partnerships with vendors, and or are supporting through the programs on the regulated side. So this is just our members, and you can see here, I mean, there's a lot of checks. And so what that means is that there are a lot of utilities that are already offering a lot of beyond the meter types products and services. I will say that, Jay, we did not have a chance to update this, but they certainly have checks in their column as well. And you're going to be getting this, so you're going to be able to kind of look this over in more detail, and I'd be glad to talk to you about it. But again, the point being with this slide, there's a lot of activity already going on and growing in terms of beyond the meter at utilities. What is kind of a paradox, though, so you have all this interest and spend on beyond the meter, and it's connected to electrification. And so, again, one of the things that we're seeing is that, after a long kind of plateau, we're starting to see electric sales per revenue per meter going up. And so again, it's ticking upwards. I would expect that this is going to continue to kick up, probably even accelerate because, I fully expect that we're going to have double or triple the sales for electric vehicles alone over the next 5 to 10 years. Even last year we doubled it. And with I just saw in the newspaper today that they are allowing the IRS is allowing of folks to directly get that credit, so $7,500 on a new sale and a lease of an electric vehicle going into next year. So I would expect that is just going to be fuel for this market. So you have a revenue going up, and then you have sales and advertising, so the marketing communication piece of this going down. So at some point, I mean, that just does not make sense. That's not sustainable. I mean that, again, as I pointed out, just with residential solar, there's so many needs and opportunities to be better engaged and communicating with our customers. And yet the dollar amount in terms of what we're spending to communicate and engage, and this is all in, is only about $4 per account. So we're getting on an average account, we're getting $100 plus. Sometimes even beyond the meter, it could be with an EV or whatever, it could even be a lot more than that. And yet we're only spending as an industry about $4 per customer on sales and advertising. So again, part of that paradigm shift is what Rob was saying, is moving from this kind of small ball regulated program focus, just essentially do the basics around everything that we're doing on that traditional core model, and moving more towards a market oriented, what the customers are doing and how we're going to support them in all facets, including on marketing and communications. What utilities, this is just an internal data from eSource, but you can kind of see here, what that spend is on traditionally around rebates. It's around discounts, it's all kinds of stuff. So there is money being spent. So the question is, how do we better expedite and integrate that with the beyond the meter? So particularly around how does a utility move from kind of a procurement model around working with vendors to a true partnership, not the least of which, it not only integrating these programs and the marketing spend, but also just, again, from a partnership, how are we going to grow the beyond the meter market together? So these are just some things that we've, again, when we interviewed the beyond the meter customers, what the utility said, they really are looking for vendor partners around their programs, research, data, how the pilots are going, what's working, what isn't working. So again, I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I would highly advocate when you think about beyond the meter as a utility, not only thinking about, okay, what does this mean for us? What's our business case? But part of that business case is how are we going to work with vendors and other market stakeholders out there to essentially make this as seamless and integrated and easy for those customers going forward. Some takeaways, and then we're going to answer your questions. As I said before, again, I think it's a paradox around the spend on Marcom trending down as utility revenue increases. I think that's unsustainable, to be honest. I think, as echoing back to what Rob said, I think this represents a pivot point. Could mean a lot more customer engagement and communications if done right, which should lead to revenue opportunities and better regulatory treatment. I think, again, when you look at from a Marcom perspective, that we need to realize that this is of almost a different class of customers. They have very distinct customer journeys and requirements around those journeys. There needs to be a real focus on integration. So again, with all those products, all those programs, at the end of the day, it's the customer's home. It's the customer's value prop and return on equity or return on investment. And then, very much support the idea of, again, moving more towards a product focused, environment versus a program focused or process focused, as we traditionally have done. So some recommendations, just again, we need to better align those marketing and communications with the customer requirements. We need to consider the total ROI and the BTM bundles. We need to really kind of, as utilities, think again about how are we going to integrate our traditional and or new programs, our marketplaces, with BTM products. And again, we need to rethink what does a partnership mean with the utility and other stakeholders, vendors, and others, in terms of moving this whole market forward for the benefit of our customers. And I'll just again end with this. I mean, again, take some time, look at this framework. I'd be interested in your comments around it, if we missed anything or if you're doing something else. But I think it's a useful way and a bigger, more expansive way to kind of think about what beyond the meter entails, both in terms of, as I said before, a customer ROI, but also from a utility perspective. I mean, how do we integrate those programs? What does innovation look like as we look at these verticals? Again, I think there's a lot of open space, if you will, or questions around who's going to be doing this kind of stuff. How are we going to do it? Because I can guarantee that your customer is already doing it or already thinking about it. So it's a little bit different than what we hear or see in the news around when you think about beyond the meter, because it's usually talking about one of these things like solar or EVs or smart home. And not really even thinking about how do we interweave, different programs and services to support those things that the customers are actually investing in. So with Rob, with that, that was a lot. Or Lauren, do we have any questions that I can address?
Yes, absolutely. We had a few questions come in. I'll be going over those right now. In regards to some of the earlier slides with Rob, what is the average saturation for homeowners that participate in the home services market? Is it 10%, 30%, more?
So we've I'd covered this a little bit earlier. What we have gotten to as an average sort of a baseline is about 32%. So take our existing customer base, combine it together across not all customers, not all meters, but residential meters. We know that we can get to 32%, which I think says a lot. There are obviously different indicators and different product mixes, and whether or not you're on bill, whether or not we're handling the move call, those are all going to influence overall participation or penetration, if you will. But I think you could use about 32% as a baseline.
How are regulated utilities keeping revenue from back the meter programs? This is in regards to the shareholder slide.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, the question, are they tracking that revenue? So some utilities again have a pretty big picture kind of look at how this is feeding into electrification. So they're looking at more in terms of, are we essentially increasing the spend on electricity or those core products? I think others have some very detailed and ambitious revenue goals, again, for the reasons I stated before, meaning that they're really looking at future earnings and also trying to manage some of the risk in terms of their current revenue model. And there's a lot of in between, but regulated, again, there's a kind of a dance, as the question kind of implies, between regulated and deregulated. Really, it's going to matter on state by state and even service territory by service territory, about what is actually allowed under the regulated model and what is, and so usually under a regulated model, this would be treated as an expense. It's probably connected to some kind of goals or objectives, targets on DSM portfolio, and or on the clean energy portfolio increasingly. But there are plenty of cases out there that even under a IOU or regulated model, that again, those revenues go straight to the bottom line. So that it goes right to the shareholder benefit. So again, I think there's a lot of different ways of slicing and dicing that.
This question is for Jamie. Can you speak more to the opportunities with beyond the meter demand management and utility control in exchange for revenue neutral tariff like GMPs? Bringing your own storage device, a whole circuit space conditioning load can be managed to everyone's benefit.
Yeah, I think, again, I mean, I think load management is going to be key. It's interesting. We just, as Rob said, I'm a big proponent of prepay energies, and I love prepay. But it was interesting. We invited Leviton to join us at our annual meeting last week, and Leviton, as many of you guys know, are one of the leading device manufacturers. So they have a huge portfolio of home products and services. They're looking at, again, sub-metering opportunities with their devices connected to prepay. And I love that because, again, it potentially gets us into that multifamily market, the renter market, in a way that allows customers actually to essentially do something on the DSM side that's meaningful, and then they can see the results and it reinforces that behavior through something like prepay. So again, I think part of what our challenge is when we look at the traditional program is moving away from, just a strict kind of look at engineering measures, screwing in a light bulb and counting those savings, to much more creative views interwoven with what the customer is doing around beyond the meter. I don't think, for example, I know there's a lot of interest and excitement around heat pumps, for example. But again, given what Rob said about, oftentimes a majority of customers struggling with no credit or struggling to pay bills as it is, I mean, that's going to have its place, but it's we need to be thinking broader than that, in order to integrate, the traditional measures and new measures that are regulated, those programs into beyond the meter. Another example, I mean, there should be almost an immediate conversation, as many utilities do, and almost treat it as an onboard or new account. When somebody gets an EV, they absolutely need to be educated about, what the time of use or dynamic pricing is, and they should get on that rate right away. Otherwise, it's going to be very expensive, especially in the shoulder months. For those customers, and that could lead to a total blowback about what the heck, I bought this thing and it's costing me a mint. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there to look at what we're doing on the regulated side with the DSM portfolio to better integrate and support those customers on the BTM side.
Perfect. We have time for a couple more questions. Rob, this is in reference to slide 12. Do you have a more detailed information on how much each of these aspects impacts program effectiveness?
I'd have to go back to slide 12 real quick. I don't want to waste time doing that. So I guess it really, I hope this will answer the question. So one thing that I think we could really help listeners with is to sit down and kind of talk to you about your journey as it stands. Where are you currently on your, do you have a roadmap? Have you started the journey? What sort of programs? That one slide, the matrix slide that Jamie shared, I think is really a powerful takeaway, showing kind of what existing utilities are doing what and why. But and I think it's important to note that of our 35 plus utilities that we're currently partnering with, in some instances, money's very important. And in other instances, it's not important at all. They don't want to take any money, or if they do take any money, they'll immediately reinvest it. So I think just looking at your overall strategy, we have gas utilities that are offering a lot of electric programs. We have electric companies that are offering a variety of gas-related programs. And now we kind of have that, bridging the gap with home electronics that any utility could cover, because you're going to find a ton of them in every residential environment. So it just really depends. I think the best way to answer that would be, let us sit down. We've got a team of highly professional colleagues that can sit down and, from a consultative perspective, talk to you about what you're currently doing, what you're and why, what you're not doing and why, to look at different programs. We can run numbers. If you were to adopt, a couple of our solutions, and we can bring in other vendors. We work very closely with other beyond the meter vendor partners, many of which are on today's call, and introduce you to them as well. That I think will help give you a very good idea overall of, what the potential success can be of any of these programs, and then you can kind of tweak from there. I haven't talked about this, but let me just inject real quick. There are some utilities that love to build these programs internally, others that want to outsource them third party. And you also have the ability of doing internal pilots, and that's something that we can help guide you with as well. Let's do maybe 2 more questions, Lauren, and then we'll wrap up.
Perfect. Well, I would, this one is more for Jamie, but I'd love to get both of your perspectives as well. Where do you see beyond the meter initiatives here in the next 5 to 10 years?
Good question.
Well, again, I think a lot of that's going to be driven by the billions and billions and billions of dollars that are going to be dumped in the economy around the IRA. I mean, as I said before, I mean, you're throwing fuel on the fire for electric vehicles by adding another $7,500 credit that's directly applied at the time of purchase and or leasing. That alone, again, is just going to, again, serve as a major driver and boost to more and more people getting an electric vehicle. I will have to say, again, whoever's buying those electric vehicles are going to have a high propensity, essentially, to have a smart home and thinking about solar too, because solar is going to also get a lot of credit. So I expect this market is just going to blow up over the next 5 years, not the least of which because of all the money that's going to be poured into basically facilitating and expediting.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Jamie. And I was just thinking about it in preparing for this. I remember being in this industry for 25 plus years, such as yourself, the deployment of smart meters and just what a painful process that was, or outage maps, or proactive messaging, or native apps, or prepay, or marketplace sites. I think we're kind of on the beginning of that journey overall, as more and more utilities adopt beyond the meter solutions. But I think as humans, we're a little reluctant to change. But I think we have the ability of shaping, as utilities and vendors alike, of shaping what this industry looks like 5 and 10 years from now. I think it's going to be clearly a very exciting time. Lauren, I know we're out of time. If we do have more questions that we haven't gotten to, why don't we do that kind of offline, and we'll get those answered either from Jamie or myself. Let me go ahead and close now, because I want to respect everybody's time. Thank you all for joining us. I hope that you'll reach out to Jamie for more information. I don't think you mentioned, Jamie, that you've got your Beyond the Meter Working Group annual conference is coming up in early December in Orlando, Florida. Who doesn't want to go to Orlando in early December? A great opportunity to sit shoulder to shoulder with vendors and utilities alike. A great opportunity for networking. Here's Jamie's contact information. Here's our contact information. You all will get a copy of the recording of the webcast, the audio, and the slide deck. Big shout out to Lauren Fisher-Keller for kind of being the behind the scenes person to make all the mechanics work. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We hope to hear from you soon. Take care.